What's happening, tabletop gamers? My name is LeunameGames. Welcome back to LeunameGames. Today we're going to learn how to play the 2 to 4 player shuffle building card game Smash Up by Paul Peterson and published by AEG. In Smash Up's, factions from across the universe are coming together for an epic battle for world domination, and the players will be taking control of these factions, placing minions out onto various locations around the world, attacking the bases and each other in such a way to hopefully have the bases blow up so that you score the points. And the first one to 15 points wins. Let's get to the table and let's see what's in the box. To set up the game, place all of the factions in the game in the center of the playing area. If you have any expansions, feel free to place the factions from them in the playing area as well. Randomly determine who goes first, then going in clockwise, each player will go around choosing 2 factions to play as. Once everyone has chosen their first faction, starting with the last player who chose their first faction and going counterclockwise, everyone will then choose their second faction. Any extra factions that are not chosen will then be returned to the box. They will not be used for the game. While you don't have to do this if you don't want to, I personally would highly recommend when you place the factions out, place them randomly out face down so that nobody knows what they're taking. Once everyone has chosen their 2 factions, you will then take the factions that you have chosen and simply shuffle them together to form a single team. Once each player has assembled their team, shuffle the base cards and deal 1 to the board per player plus 1. So for example, I'm setting up for a 4-player game, so I will then be dealing out 4 bases for the players to destroy. The rest of the bases can be set aside for now. They will come into play later on. Each player will then draw 5 cards to form their starting hand. There are 2 types of cards in the game. Minions, which have a number on them, and these are what you'll be using to destroy bases. And action cards, which you can tell are actions because they don't have a number. If after drawing your opening hand shows that you have no minion cards, show your hand to everybody, then discard those cards and draw 5 new cards for your hand. You must keep the second hand no matter what. Determine who got up the earliest on the morning you're playing the game, and you are ready to begin. On your turn, there are 4 things you must do in the following order. First, you must check to make sure there are any cards out there that are yours that have an effect that happens at the start of your turn. For example, this overrun card from the zombies says to destroy this action at the start of your turn. Another example is the smoke bomb from the ninjas that says to destroy this card at the start of your turn. Anytime a minion or an action were to be destroyed, that card goes in the owner's discard pile. After that, you may then play 1 minion or 1 action or 1 of each for free. You can do this in any order that you want, and you don't have to play any cards at all if you don't want to. To play a minion, you simply take a minion from your hand and place it under the base that you want to place it on. Make sure when you do place a minion, make sure that minion is facing towards you so that everyone knows that that minion belongs to you. Once you play a minion on a base, you will then do whatever the card effect of the minion says. For example, this enchantress says to draw a card, so you will simply draw a card and add it to your hand. One thing to keep in mind, cards with one-time abilities like this one only occur when you play them from your hand, or anytime a card actually says play in its description. So, if you had a minion and it gets moved from one base to another one, that does not count as playing the minion. If you want to play an action, simply show the action card that you want to play to everybody, do whatever the card says, and then simply discard it. Unless the action has an ongoing ability. I'll talk more about the ongoing cards a little bit later. Minions can have 3 different effects on them. A simple one-time effect, like this Tiger Assassin, where once you use the ability, That is it as long as it is in play, and you cannot use that ability again. Ongoing means that as long as this minion remains out on the board, you can continue to do the effect that it states on its card. Specials, however, have a very specific condition that must happen in order for their ability to be triggered. For example, this Tenacious Z says, during your turn, you may play this card from your discard pile as an extra minion. Likewise, this Ninja Acolyte says, on your turn, if you have not yet played a minion, you may return this minion to your hand and play an extra minion on this base. Or, the Scout allows you to, after this base is scored, you may place this minion in your hand instead of the discard pile. Basically, the abilities of specials happen whenever the condition on their cards is met. Actions have two different abilities. The single one-time abilities, like I said before, where once you play them, you discard them. The other is ongoing, similar to the ongoings on the minions. When you play an action that has an ongoing effect, that action will stay there until it is forced to be removed. Once you have played all of the cards that you want to play or are able to play, you must then check to see if there are any bases ready to be scored. To determine whether a base is ready to be scored, count the total amount of power of all the minions that are placed on the base and compare that to the power number listed on that base. If the combined power of the minions and any actions that benefit them meet or exceed the base's value, the base will be scored. For example, the Central Brain has a level of 19, but there's no minions here, so this is not ready to be scored. The Jungle Oasis has a minion on it, but it's only a power of 2, and the Jungle Oasis level is 12. The School of Wizardry, however, has a level of 20, but the minions here do equal 20. That means this base is ready to be scored. If there are ever multiple bases that are ready to be scored, the player whose turn it is decides which order they will be scored in. However, before you score any bases, make sure if there's anyone who wants to use a special ability. Starting with the current player and going around, go until each player has passed in sequence. If you pass and another player uses a special, you can still choose to use a special of your own. If your special allows you to play extra cards, you must play those immediately or you can't play them at all. Once everyone has played their specials, you then count the total amount of power for each player's sets of minions. Whoever has the most power on a base when it is scored scores the first place points. Whoever has the second most gets second place points, and so on. After a base is scored, players can use special abilities that can happen after a base scores. For example, the Scout, like I showed earlier, where you can take this card and move it to your hand instead of your discard pile. Then all cards that are still on that base will go to their discard piles of their owners. This does not count as destroying them, but they might trigger abilities when they go into the discard pile. Once a base has been scored and all of the cards that are on it have been discarded, take the base, discard it, and then take a new base from the top of the deck to replace it. If there is ever a tie for the most power on a base when it is scored, the tied players involved get points for the best position that they are tied for. For example, these two are tied for the most, so they will both get the first place bonus. The second place then will then get the third place bonus. If there, however, was a tie for the second place bonus, the tied players will both get the second place bonus, and the third place player will get nothing. If players tie for the base's ability, which I will get to in a moment, they each get to use it. Before I go any further, I want to explain a little bit more about the bases. Obviously, like I said, you have the first, second, and third place points. You have the break value, which all the power of the minions around it have to reach in order to score the base. But most bases have a special ability written on the bottom of these cards. The ability is what each of the bases do, and as long as the bases are out, the effect of the base will always be in effect. And the effects of the bases are different depending on the base. For example, the factory says when it scores, the winner gains a point for every 5 power that they have there. The tar bit, after every time a minion is destroyed here, you put at the bottom of the owner's deck. When this base scores, you get a point for every minion that's there, and so on and so forth. And each of these has different effects that can change the way the game is played out, or how their bases are scored, or even the way that minions will act as soon as a base is scored. After all the bases that need to be scored are scored and replaced, check to see if a player has reached 15 or more points. If they did, the game ends immediately. If no one has achieved 15 points yet, the game will continue. After all bases are scored, you will then draw 2 cards from the top of your deck, add them to your hand, and then your turn is over. If there are any effects that happen at the end of the turn, like this swashbuckling card, they will then trigger. Once that happens, play will then pass to the player on the left. The game ends at the end of a player's turn when somebody reaches 15 or more points. Once that happens, whoever has the most points wins the game. If there is a tie for the most points, you will keep playing turns until there is no longer a tie. If you ever run into a situation where the card text and the rules text conflict with each other, there is a section in the back of the rule book on page 9 that can help you sort out the issue. And that's everything you need to know in order to play Smash Up. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. If you want to learn my thoughts on Smash Up, or if you want to learn how to play more games, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more tutorials, reviews, and unboxings. Thank you all as always so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.